I am Brent Gardner, and I will be chairing the session together with Magda Guglielmo. I'm the machine
Hello.
learning tech lead at CSIRO in scientific computing, and Magda is the science applications tech lead in the same group. I want to thank the ARDC for coordinating this session and supporting the ML4AU community of practice and this session. This session is divided into two parts. In the first, we will hear three examples about how machine learning has been applied to research by CSIRO's scientific computing group. Then the second part, we'll have an update from Amir Anees about the Federated ML project being led by the University of New South Wales and the ARDC. So a little bit of housekeeping first. The slides and recordings will be shared afterward. And please put questions you have for the presenters in the chat. And then
James here from
with
Beacon
that, I
Scott.
will
Just give you a call regarding the inspection at 17 King Street, Lahur.
pass to,
Deleted. Next
I think it's
message received.
Warren, I think. Thanks. Perfect. Then I think I'll pass to Magda.
Okay, thank you, Brent. I just want to introduce who we are because we are talking about scientific computing, but it's not not everybody knows what we do. So we are we collaborated with scientists and with different problem at CSIRO. We apply data science and software engineering technique to the project. And what we do, we collaborating with them for experimenting new technique or proof of concept. And sometimes we publish paper and we collaborate with them from the beginning to the end of the research. And what we are going to present today is not an holistic view of what has been done in CSIRO, but is just some example of what we do as a scientific group, scientific computing group, what we do with them, with the scientists. So let's start with Morgan. Morgan,
yes.
Can you share your screen? Okay.
Coming through okay.
Thank you. So Morgan will talk about machine learning approach to understand the drivers of Australian rainfall variability. Thank you, Morgan.
Thank you. Yes, so as they both said, this was kind of a collaboration project in the scientific computing team between myself, Brent, and the researcher Peter Dobrohoff, who works primarily with the Australian access model. So I'll just give a kind of a brief overview for those that have no idea what this is. So it stands for the Australian Community Climate and Earth Systems Simulator. So it's Australia's national modeling system used to simulate our weather and climate and Earth systems across various timescales. So it's based off the UK Met Unified model, but is tuned to represent the climate process and drivers critical to the southern hemisphere. So to give better and accurate, more accurate forecasts of the climate that kind of Australians are most interested in. So it's a coupled model, which just means that it's made up of kind of many different submodels that all feed into kind of the single outcome that is used for kind of the forecasting, the simulations. There's models used for kind of climate, land, water, various other physics simulators, and it is in here used as an ensemble model. So the graph that we've got going on here is there's a kind of a 40-member ensemble, and we're looking at one of the outcomes from the model, which is a simulation from 1850 to 1899 of rainfall over Australia. So each line there is one of the ensemble members with a couple of highlight, kind of the max and min highlighted there. And kind of access is used as the base model, which is fed into a whole bunch of different forecasting use cases. So it's used for kind of the daily weather forecast, as well as in this case here, long-running climate forecasts for Australia. So because it's made up of so many different models and submodels, and the process requires a lot of tuning and tweaking. It's of kind of great interest for all of the physicists and people developing this model to kind of understand any outliers or artifacts that occur to make it better and to tweak it and make it a more accurate representation of the climate as close as they can. So, but because it's so complicated, this makes the process quite difficult. And this is kind of the point of the collaboration project here was. So it was kind of a proof of concept looking into can ML surrogate modeling help better understand access. So the idea is here taking rather than using an ML model to try and predict the climate directly, we're using trying to train an ML model to predict the outputs of access, or in this case, a very small subset of the outputs that they were interested in looking at, which is rainfall over Australia. So why a machine learning model here is kind of useful in this aspect is it lets us try and look at just a subsection of the access model, one piece at a time, and we can use a lot of explainable ML methods that have been developed. For example, here we have kind of a feature importance map on the right here from a CNN model, and can we use those to look at inputs into the access model to better understand how the rainfall occurs or what might be driving particular outcomes or results in the model. So to start off, we started off with kind of a very simple convolutional neural network model to predict as a regression CNN to just predict a single number, which is the average Australian rainfall for kind of each day over Australia. So we used only a couple of inputs from the variables from the access model. So we looked at the sea surface temperature, sea temperature in the upper 300 meters, sea level pressure, and eastward wind. We fed it into a 3-level convolutional 2D model and just was trying to predict the single average Australian rainfall number over the end. So we trained this on kind of using the 40 different ensemble method member outputs for the period from historical simulations from 1850 to 1970, and we received kind of a decent R-squared model for the regression output of 0.75. So kind of a fit that suggests that the inputs that we have selected are correlated, but we're not super interested in the output of this model. We're interested in kind of applying some explainable ML methods to then take this output and look at for across the samples what are the inputs that are most important for producing this prediction. So the first 3 methods that we looked at were all variations of GradCam, which is gradient class activation maps. So they're a specific feature importance method, or a method specific to CNNs. And rely on the activation maps that are just in the last convolutional layer. So the method boils down to it takes kind of these activation maps, it weights each map using the gradient, and is used to the gradient between the last activation layer and the output, and builds a feature importance map out of those 2 numbers. So GradCam was originally developed for classification CNNs, and the original method used a lot for kind of ResNet style architectures. So it's takes each activation map, weights each one for the gradient, and produces a result. And we've tried 2 other methods on top of that, which is high-res-cam, which is kind of a slight improvement on GradCam, and then high-res RAM, which is the same method but better suited for regression rather than classification problems. So to just dive a little bit deeper into that and kind of some example results here. So we used kind of started off with the initial GradCam method to see how well it was kind of doing with the input results. So we end up with this kind of spatial mapping of the areas highlighted in yellow. There are the features or the spatial areas that have the most importance towards the rainfall across Australia. So for GradCam here, we were running into a couple of problems where it was producing quite a lot of artifacts across the image, which the next method, high-res cam, so instead of doing weightings across each activation map, it weights per pixel, produced kind of a more localized result for the drivers of rainfall. And then there was also another method, which was grad-ram, where instead of just taking the positive gradients, which you're only interested in for classification problems, you're instead for regression problems interested in both the positive and negative gradients. So instead you take the absolute, you end up with what we combined together, which was the high-res cam and the grad-ram into high-res ram, and gives us features that are both positive towards and negatively weighted towards contributing to rainfall over Australia. So those were kind of the initial 3 techniques that we looked at, but there's some limitations of the method is that it kind of only works with CNN, and it only looks at the spatial dimension. So we don't get a breakdown of which of the features are most important either. So the 4th method we looked at, which is Deep Explainer, takes the inputs, looks at how important they are to the output by estimating the SHAP values of each individual pixel that's fed into the CNN model. So you might have heard of these before. They've become quite popular with visualizations with XGBoost model, and it's a built-in method for visualizing some of the results for that. And the Deep Explainer adapts it for any deep learning model. So we're not limited to just CNN anymore either here. So the SHAP values also just contributes to a feature importance map, which gives us these outputs instead. So this is for a particular sample for the model. We're able to look into the 4 feature maps that were input into it and split it down by each particular one. So we're able to see kind of in a lot more detail here the features that are most contributing to that single average rainfall over Australia as well. So feeding different samples that the researchers are interested into looking at can really do kind of a deep dive into the model inputs and see which particular spatial features and model variables are most contributing to the output that they're interested in. So this was kind of an initial proof of concept into this area, and there's kind of a lot of things that can be expanded on here. So the first one is we were just using kind of a very simple CNN architecture and a very simple single variable as the output. So there's kind of in kind of the last couple of years a lot of very interesting weather simulation specific architectures that have been released that kind of competing with the typical or the more traditional numerical weather prediction models now. So it's possible to get quite accurate ML models to simulate or work alongside the numerical models and kind of a lot of diffusion transformer architectures and have become very good in this regard. And so it'd be interesting to see improving that, adding more inputs into the model and getting more complicated outputs as well. So instead of just looking at kind of a single number, looking at kind of the gridded output of Australian rainfall as well. And the second is kind of improving the feature visualizations. So at the moment, the method just can do one sample at a time, but looking at more aggregated effects over many samples and visualizing kind of average and variance plots along those to find variables that are consistently impacting or features that are consistently impacting Australian rainfall across many different samples. And for kind of transformer architectures, as kind of the attention maps are also kind of a new method for visualizing feature importance as well. So they would be kind of very interesting to look at and can compare to these base methods. And I think that's me done.
Oh, I was gonna say that's 2 minutes, but there you go.
Yeah.
Thank you, Morgan. Please, everybody, if you have any question, put in the chat. No question? If not, you will have some time at the end for asking a question to Morgan, and we can welcome Dr. Suki Yong, who will talk about AI cross-domain collaboration in coastal mapping and biomedical discovery. Suki?
Hello. Yes, I hope you could hear me and see my screen right now.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Let's see, full screen. Oops. Okay. Right, actually it's already full screen, but then whatever. All right. Hi everyone. I'm going to talk about AIX or cross-domain collaboration in coastal mapping and biomedical discovery. And first, I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land that we are meeting on today and pay my respect to their elders past and present. So I guess my talk is on AI cross domain collaboration in scientific computing program at CSIRO. Why this is important? So of course, modern AI methods are increasingly domain agnostic right now. So domain, of course, that doesn't mean that domain experts are not needed. They are really essential in this case for problem formulation, validation, and also the interpretation of the analysis of the results. And effective collaboration comes essentially from combining these two, the AI and the domain expert in this case. Just like to show this AI and domain expert and then its crossover. And right, so here goes my overview. On the first part, I'm going to talk briefly on coastal mapping of Australian beaches in using deep learning. And the second part, I'm going to present something on or Science Agent OLAB is open multi-agent large language models for biomedical discovery. So on the first part, coastal mapping. I would like to thank my collaborators here's listed here as well. So the main aim is to automatically segment sandy beaches along the Australian coastline from aerial imagery using weakly supervised and open source labels from OpenStreetMap. So I guess why this matter, because manual beach mapping is of course labor intensive, and of course you don't want to hire grad student or students occasionally to just manually map the beaches. And of course there's a variation between the map beaches from, I would say, citizen to citizen in this case. And also the coastlines are dynamic essentially. So we actually wanted an automated segmentation that are consistent and also a large scale mapping. So just a brief overview on the data set. The coverage is the Australian coastline, which my collaborators have put a lot of effort in downloading and preparing the data set. The imagery is from the Bing map, and we also actually have a S3 imagery as well. The labels are from the beach polygon from the OpenStreetMap. We split the data set into, the numbers there if you're interested. So it's actually quite large, and we have a huge coverage of, it's essentially the whole Australian coastlines here. So I guess I would just mention a bit of how we devices workflow. So we essentially have the input mask and the images here, and we apply a UNet model, which Morgan has briefly mentioned about the CNN, which is a convolutional neural net. This is another variation. It's called the UNet model. And then there you could calculate the loss with the and feed it into the UNet, and it's an iterative process for the train and validation. And of course, each iteration you could save the best trained model. And once we have that, we could set up, we could use the test data set and use and apply the model to generate the output mask. So this is the rough outline of the pipeline. And just to show you this uh, result for the, I would say, selected region, because I don't have the bandwidth to um, uh, put all the segmented area here, because it takes quite some time to load. But this is a quick overview. I just choose New South Wales here because I'm currently at New South Wales, but if there is your favorite beach, let me know. I could generate them as well. So let's zoom in a little bit here. And you could see this is somewhat the outline that are map. Um, this part here are pretty much okay, I would say. But of course, as you scroll down, you could see that not all of them are mapped nicely, but mostly yeah, I would say mostly are quite um uh good here, in the sense that it's automated, and also we use this training we use these labels from the OpenStreetMap as our I would say weekly supervised uh to train the model. And yeah, and you can see this part here is not segmented as expected. So this is just a rough um, preliminary results on the selected regions here. But of course, as you could see just now, I would just like to highlight some caveats. There is an occasional inland and done a misclassification, as you could see previously. The precise beach mapping boundary remains a challenge here. There are also next step, model evaluation. You could we need to devise a method to compare how good they are compared to the I would say, not to say a ground truth label, because it's from the open source. I mean, because it's from the weekly labeled mask that we have. But we need to like devise some matrices to compare how good the segmented maps are. And right now we are also planning to extend it to a global coastline. I think I have run the job right now, but then it takes the ages to get it into the queue. But yeah, hopefully we could get some output pretty soon. And also the next thing is that it's quite a we are planning to do some temporary analysis by using data set from different different year on the same region. So I guess I will move on to the next part, which is talking a little bit about the using large language model on this biomedical discovery. Um, yeah, again, I would like to thank my collaborators listed here. The aims are uh, the aim for this project is to make it open, locally deployable, multi-agent large language model framework that supports biomedical literature analysis and scientific reasoning. Well, the main one would be is because it's privacy and also it's cost efficient. Cost efficient in this sense is that um, I guess because you are not using a closed API call that such as Open AI or I mean such as Claude, for example, and for each iteration uh, or for each reasoning, of course, it takes it costs tokens, and that means cost money. Um, but yeah, so I guess in this case, the cost efficient part would be um, uh, because you are using the open source model and deploy it locally. But of course, you do need a reasonable, I would say, computational resource. Yeah, so why local and open? Because the biomedical data is often sensitive, subjected to restricted access. And as I mentioned previously, cloud-based large language model can be costly and also non-transparent. So what we want to do is to use open weights models that support local deployment, data governance, and also full control over workflow. I guess I should mention that the full control workflow is such that you could add, well, should I say, whatever tool call that you want into this framework to make your, I will say, your agent or scientific reasoning workflow better. So just a rough overview. Yeah, as I mentioned, it's a self-hosted and open source platform that is designed to emulate collaborative scientific teams. This is inspired from the virtual lab framework. But in their in their project, they use OpenAI, which is a closed model. But we have adapted it to use any open weights model from well, you could use it from Hugging Face or your any one of your favorite one. And also, it could be deployed locally as long as you have I would say, decent GPU, else you would need to wait a long time for the reasoning part. I guess I could go through the framework really quickly. On the first part, you have the agent, which you could define. And you are the human user, and you could put in a principal investigator, um, which acts you could say as a main agent um, that that is under. I mean, this you have a few team members that will be under the principal investigator, for example, immunologists and machine learning specialists, computational biologists, for example, and this will be overseen by this principal investigator. And then you have this scientific critic, which, or I would say, provide a critical feedback on the responses that you get from all these agents. And then the next part is that you also have these team meetings. Well, I'm not going to go through in detail, but you could have a look at their paper if you are interested. This will be done for an amount of iteration that you want, and then it will output an answer. Um, and it also has a individual meeting, which conduct individually with the scientific critic. So the next part is I would just demonstrate a use case for in this case. I guess I this use case designing nanobodies binder for SARS-CoV-2 is from the original paper. So we just wanted to test whether it well how I would say how well the response are using the original use case. So their goal is to modify the existing nanobodies to improve the binding to the newest variant of the SARS-CoV spike protein. And in this case, I use Microsoft 5.4. It's just because it's quick to compute and it's relatively small, I would say, smallish.
That's 2 minutes, Suki.
Okay, right, thanks. So in the first part, you have the define the agents, which is the same one as you have seen. And then I would just show you, flash it to you, some of the outputs that has been generated using the 5.4. This is the next part is the query generation. So this is the example output query that from 5.4. If any biology expert in the call could comment on this, whether if they are reasonable or not. And then the third part is it is performing the automated literature review. I'm just going to go through this, but I'm not going to read all this. And this is the example of the paper summarization. And yeah, I'm just going to throw down a little bit, but really quickly so that everyone could have a flash on it. Yeah, so essentially, um, of course, I would also like to mention some caveats um, in this case. So the performance is dependent on the base large language model, and also how we design the prompt and the agents. There is, of course, the risk of hallucination, and definitely the expert review required. Just quickly on the next step, we could expand our use case currently to not just biomedical discovery, but also to any scientific research for as well. And we could improve the user interaction by putting in, for example, a chat-like interface, because right now it's just everything in command line. And the next part is to improve the retrieval grounding, and definitely expert review in this case. Just summary. I hope I'm on time, but I could just show you the last slide, coastal mapping and the science agent here. And yep, thanks. I will just put my slide summary if anyone have any question.
Thank you, Suki. Somebody can put a question online if you want to. But I have a question, and I apologize if you already did it, answer, but I think it's good to repeat. So you say that for your LLM, the performance depend on several things, including what kind of LLM you're using and so on. But you also mentioned it depend on the prompt.
Yeah.
Can you comment a little bit more on that? Like, did you find some experimented with some technique to improve the performance, or like short prompt or longer things like that?
I think that is the tricky part. I mean, I guess it also depends on the model that you are using. Because I think I found that some um, yeah, some LMs like it to be like a structured prompt. Like for example, these are the agents. Here are your aim. This is your this is what this is the output that we want, and so on. But then some of them likes, like for example, just a long chunk of text, like a paragraph or something. And also, yeah, I guess another well, the prompt part is another thing that we need to take note is that how the output are extracted, because if in your prompt you mentioned that you want you kind of need to mention what kind of output that you like. And in my case, I put it as I wanted the output as a JSON file so I could extract everything that is within JSON. Um, because the thing yeah, because the tricky part is that the LM has a reasoning step as well, and you don't. I mean, sometimes you want the output of the reasoning, or separate from the final output. And so you do need to carefully mention that, okay, you need to separate these different parts. Yeah, I hope that someone answered your question, but yeah, thanks.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, you did. There is a question in the chat. How are you orchestrating multiple open source LLM is this framework like LangChain?
Yes, I mean, I'm using LangChain right now, but sorry, the first part is am I using a multiple LM call or multiple different models?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Like, yeah, did I understand it correctly that you're using multiple open source LLM models? And if so,
Right.
are you orchestrating in using any framework like that?
Sorry, the last part, what? Am I orchestrating something?
Orchestrating the LLMs using toolchain like LangChain.
Yep. Yeah. So the thing is that I would say you could think of it as in like each agent is a individual tool call, not tool call, agent call or tool call. Yeah. So you could build you could ask the agent to so you could ask the agent to call different tools, like for example, okay, maybe this one. Yeah, so for each agent here, for example, the machine learning specialist, it could call a tool, it could call a tool, for example, get some uh retrieve the literature from some machine learning journal, for example. And so this each of them is a, yeah, you could think of it as a um yeah, individual agent.
So
Does
it's
it
still,
somewhat
yeah,
sorry?
it's, I guess some human intervention would be required. Like, of course, you will try to orchestrate all these things, but still review parts of the process.
Yes. So each of them would output a single file. So with that file, you could analyze the output and the reasoning as well if you would like. So as I said, this right now everything is in like what's it called, is is in command line, and also the output is in based on the file. But yeah, you could definitely analyze per agent, the output from per agent, and that's what we have done as well. Yeah, and each agent has its own topic, so there's a lot of things that you could look at.
Thank
Right,
you.
thanks.
Thank you, Suki. There is another question. Can you give an estimate of the compute required to tune the LLM?
Sorry, to fine
To
tune or?
train to train or fine tune the LLM?
So I think as in like at least to run this on a decent GPU, well, I run it on the HPC, but then I think you could run it on one GPU with I don't know, computer normal grade one, at least with Microsoft Phi. And I think if you, I also, I mean, as I tried various model, the OpenAI OSS model is also possible to use one GPU for inference because this, yeah, all this is only for inference. But if you want fine tune, I think that is a different requirement because I also use this for fine tuning. You do well, at least you can't well, I think at yeah, at least you need a multi-node GPUs here. But you could but then you could potentially fine tune it with using a quantized model. I have tried that and it works. Yeah. Well, 16-bit one, 4-bit quantized model is possible as well. Right, thanks.
Thank you. And how do you ensure that the data quality for the training?
Because we have the what's it called? We have a few biomedical experts to verify that. And yeah,
So
I
there is a
guess.
human intervention to estimate the quality of what.
Well, they could comment whether if the input and output are reliable or not, at least, because they are familiar with this topic, I guess. Yeah. And also as in like all these steps are essentially like all these steps that has been mentioned, essentially you could well, I would say inject it by yourself, and that's why as in like, it's called a human AI agent collaboration thing, because you could essentially, okay, like for example, in this case, I don't like this query generator, and you could basically just create this query by yourself and inject it to this automated literature's review search. Or if you think that okay, I already have a list of literature that I'm familiar with, and I think there are those are more reliable than this output, you could also inject this and also move on to the next step for paper summarization. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Suki.
All right. Thanks.
There is another question in the chat. We have to move on. So can you please answer that in the chat?
Sure.
Thank you. And now I welcome Paulus Lahur, Dr. Paulus Lahur. Sorry for missing the doctor bit. And today is going to talk about evolution as an invention machine, how computer autonomously design industrial static mixer.
Thank you.
Paulus?
Can you see my screen?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. And yes, I'll just jump straight into the topic then. This project was a past project in CSIRO, and I should mention the collaborators of this project. This is Gerald Pereira, David Howard, Michael Breeden, Phil Kilby, and Christian Horner. So this is a bit different from what we have been talking about, and probably came as a bit of surprise with this audience, because this is not machine learning, but this is part of AI world as well. So let me just show you this diagram, which I got from ChatGPT, so it's gotta be true. So AI is actually quite a big domain, and inside it, it's truly dominated by machine learning, deep learning stuff. So, but actually there are other methods as well, and they're quite powerful. The one that I'm going to talk about is evolutionary methods, which is over here. If you can see my cursor, the yellow box, which is quite tiny actually in comparison. So in essence, if you just put it informally, what machine learning and genetic algorithm is, machine learning is about learning from this body of knowledge and answer questions based on that knowledge. So it's processing existing knowledge. Whereas for evolutionary algorithm or genetic algorithm, I use it in the same way. Actually, they're a bit different. So it's just like the real life. Given a challenging environment, come up with increasingly better solutions that can survive in that environment. So it's iteratively invent something new, which is knowledge creation instead of using the existing one. So you might be asking, isn't this old stuff? People already using this for a long time. Yes, they do, especially for well-established area like aerospace, where you design aircraft wing using a optimization, but this actually only for very constrained optimization. So what we are trying to do in this work is to go further in mimicking Mother Nature. That is to truly explore novel species and promise that it's promising in terms of their performance, and that exploit, meaning find the best within that species. So speaking of mimicking nature, on the right-hand side there, you can see part of mammalian world, where you can see many shapes, including those who species that can swim, like dolphins and whales, and those that can survive in desert without drinking, like camels, or fast runners, all sort of things. So certain shapes are good for certain environments. So we want to try to mimic the way nature produces shapes here, because the idea is we want to come up with superior products by mimicking the way evolution actually works. So in nature, shapes, we come up with shapes with all the way down from a string of long protein, which is how our gene is encoded in DNA. And then that string of protein itself, not just it doesn't just contain information, but that itself can be folded into 3D shapes, and that then becomes functioning protein segments. And combined, they eventually become cells, cells become tissues, and tissues become the whole body, which is extremely complex. Well, in this project, we don't have time for that, so we just skip from design parameters, which is a string of floating numbers, and then jump straight to the final shape. So that's how we essentially what we are doing. So again, in contrast to machine learning, there is no prior knowledge or training, just like the real evolution. So the application for this is static mixer. So to those who don't know what static mixer is, it's a device that mixes fluid without any moving part. So fluid get mixed simply by flowing through a tube containing the device. So this is very useful in applications such as continuous flow chemistry. And it can actually do more than just mixing. Chemical reaction, heat transfer, or extract material from the solution, etc. So this is actually very important applications. So the challenge here is we already have a good static mixer. Actually, it's shown on the right-hand side there, and it has been designed by a domain expert, which is specialized in this field. We ask ourselves, can we beat that using evolutionary algorithm? So the specific challenge here is to use genetic algorithm to design an even better static mixer, specifically for removing copper ion from a solution. So we set up a system, and this is what a system looks like. So within the central loop, there is no human involved. So it started with, on the upper left there, genetic information, which is, as you can see, just a string of numbers, floating point numbers. And we use this number to generate geometries. Just like when you generate, for example, circle, you will need a parameter called radius to generate it. Same thing. It's just that what we generate here is way more complex of a geometry. And then we assess this geometry using computational fluid dynamics. So the CFD needs to be high fidelity, so it doesn't, misguide us into the wrong thing. It has to actually reflect how things will work in real life. That means it's going to be expensive computationally. And it has to be fast and it has to be robust, meaning that you cannot just stop in the middle because of some sort of numerical error, and then human has to go in and troubleshoot. No, that is not allowed. So it has to be, this loop has to be running fully automated. And on the lower left, we have the actual evolutionary algorithm, which means that we deal with a population consisting of a number of individuals. Each individual has its own shape. And then the shapes that are proven to be good at mixing, then will be used as the parents to produce the next generation of mixers. So a gene crossover, just like a human getting married and that kind of thing. And then we also have gene mutation. And this is the part where you can jump to different place in the design landscape. You can come up with something truly crazy using mutation. And then you have the evaluation of the fitness, meaning you use the result from CFD and then judge, this is actually good mixer, this is bad, and put a number on it. And then you select, keep selecting which one should go to the next generations. And just by repeating this, you can get into a better and better generations. So this is called Pareto front. So the Pareto front will move from the lower left, which means the mixer is really bad, all the way to the upper right, which means a mixer that can perform really well. And then finally, when we find a candidate of champions, we verify. This is where human comes in. And it has to be done using lab experiments, so it's labor intensive. So just kind of what it looks like, this geometries. The idea is to come up with shapes that are really inventive, I would say, or crazy. So this is tree-based mixers, and we use another one called ribbon-based mixers. As you can see, they look quite strange and beautiful, but they do perform a real function in mixings. So this is the result, sample results from this computations. We have 16 individuals for each population in each generations, and we have a successive generation of 150 counts. And at the end, we come up with this Pareto front. And on this front, we found winners. Those that are really good at mixing. Specifically, we judge how good the mixing quality is by looking at the transport to substrate, transport to the metal, because we want to absorb some iron from the liquid into the metal, and the bulk mixing, which is a vertical axis, meaning how well they actually mix the fluid. So these are the winners, mid winners, and they look really like alien kind of geometry. And sorry. And this is their performance. So those winners are then verified or validated using real experiments. They got 3D printed using metal 3D printing, and then run through an experiment to see how they can be effectively remove copper ion from solution. The benchmark, so the horizontal axis is the time to remove the solution, ion from the solution, and on the right-hand side is part per million of the that they can remove. So the benchmark, this is the one that designed by human, and this is already good to begin with, by the way. It's not no slouch as a mixer. This is their performance. And the tree-based geometry that I just showed you can beat this benchmark by a small margin. But the ribbon-based geometry actually beat the human design mixers very easily. In fact, it performs 45% better in removing the ions. So we ourselves, I remember we ourselves are pretty astonished by the result because we didn't think it's going to perform that well. And as you can see by the shape of the mixers, there is no way we can come up with this kind of shape ourselves. By the way, the difference between these two successive slides that I just showed you, this one showed the geometry as it was generated by the geometry generator, and the second one is how it's perceived by CFD solver and by the 3D printer. The 3D printed geometry looks similar to this, actually a bit uglier. By the way, the size is in the order, the diameter is in the order of 1 centimeter, so it's pretty small. So just to show you that this actually make it to journal, and this is just not just a simple exercise. And we produced 3 patents from this, and the project itself has been at that time expanded into many projects and more collaborations. And although funding situation is more challenging, I wouldn't go into that because this is recorded, of course. But yes, one of the things that I would like to mention actually is just the from this project, what we do know now is that the evolutionary algorithm is actually a very powerful method. And it works without prior knowledge. So it's a true machine of innovation. The downside is physics simulation is very expensive. So because you need to be the system to be high fidelity, and also the requirement is very high. It needs to be robust, meaning it has to be forgiving to any sort of crazy geometry that we throw at it. And you need to build a system to deal with that. And it needs to be fully automated. So domain knowledge to set up the system is really key.
That's 1 minute, Paulus.
Oh, yes, and finishing now. Thank you. And the promising avenues for the research is that for this audience, we actually was in the process at that time to incorporate machine learning to reduce the cost of physics simulation. And this actually a very interesting area. And also Bayesian optimization instead of genetic algorithm to guide exploration. So with that, I think The rest is acknowledgement, and thank you for your attention. I just leave it in this. Thank you.
Thank you, Paulus. There's a question for you. So
Yeah.
how are you setting the constraint to reflect a physically viable system, which might be more than just optimize a CFD model output?
Yes.
From Ghana, sorry, you can ask yourself.
Yeah.
No, I get it. Thank you very much. And actually, this is a very important aspect. At that time, actually, we didn't realize that fully how important this is. We only realize it when it comes the time to print the stuff. There where we realize that actually you need to take into account structural integrity. Not just that, the ability for human to handle that. As you can see on the lower right-hand side, you see all those spikes. They're actually hazard for handling. So we need to make provision that learning from that experience, then we build into the system to deal with the structural integrity and handling quality into the process. So the thing that don't satisfy that requirement will not be considered as champion.
Yeah, I mean, you actually answered my second question. How do you
Okay.
clean these static mixes of different types? But you mentioned that, okay, generic algorithm does not have, doesn't require prior knowledge. But I'm wondering, when you set up the initial string, right? That is based on prior knowledge, right? It's not coming through machine learning, but it's coming through the domain knowledge. The whole thing is bringing the prior knowledge into picture, and same with a CFD model that comes with enormous prior knowledge in the domain as well. Though it's not ML.
Yeah. Very good point, Nana. Yes. So a bit of story from the project. So initially, what we tried is a 3D-based geometry. And when we did that geometry, we realized that actually this process is not very good because from domain expert point of view, those three structure, meaning long thin cylinders, are actually not that good as a geometry for mixing. So that's where I got an idea. Then we need to use our intuition to come up with geometry that actually good for mixing. And learning from nature, that should be something that's wide and thin, just like wing. So that's where we come up with a ribbon-based geometry. And that proves to be the winning choice. So you are absolutely right. Actually, we are injecting our own human knowledge into the geometry generation. Because maybe if we let the geometry generator, some random one, will come up with that final geometry, but it will take a very long time, just like in the true evolution. Whereas we human have deadlines. So we have to skip the entire process and just pick the best from nature and then put it in the geometry generator as our knowledge. So yes, you are right. It's not that the thing invent by itself, but we inject our knowledge well in the beginning during the setup of the domain. That's where the domain expert and domain learning actually come into play. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a great work. Thank you, Paulus.
Thank you.
And also, Paulus, I have a question follow-up from what you just said, that you put your knowledge into the system itself, but don't you think that the choice of the fitness function, or how you select the model, also incorporate that information, like that's knowledge, because you choose what you want. You select the algorithm, you transform mathematically something that take what you want and transform it mathematically in something that the algorithm can learn on. So do you think this information is also in there?
Yeah. So we have to be very specific about what we want from this species, meaning we define the requirement. Take for living thing, for example, the requirement, for example, is to survive. So that translates differently depending on as an animal, if you're predators, that means you have to be really fast and good at hunting. But if you are the prey, you have to be really fast and good at recognizing your surrounding. So those requirements have to be really specific also for this case, for the static mixer, and specific to the objective that we want. So that's where we put our knowledge into. Yeah.
Thank you. There's the last question for you, which is a very interesting one. Did you spot any interesting pattern or insight when doing evolutionary algorithms?
Yes. So the first thing is we cannot predict what the evolutionary algorithm will come up with. But after we see the result, we can sort of explain it backward. Oh, you are like this because you have to deflect the fluid insert this way, and that it get mixed more readily. So we can only explain the geometry, but we cannot predict the geometry. We cannot go forward. Just like when we see nature, it's very hard to predict what's going to happen next. But when you see a bird, we can sort of explain, oh yes, your shape is like this because you need to fly very quick. And so it works backward. You can explain things, but not predict.
I have the same.
I hope that answers.
Yeah, I find it question interesting because when I did my PhD on genetic algorithm, and one of the things that we were interested in is to see the things that kind of work, like the combination of parameters that kind of work, but they were not physically possible because we decided to free the fitness function so they make it a little bit more open, not be so restraining, just to explore what the model was coming out with. But it was just it's something that I wanted to explore more because I just had the idea but never had the opportunity to go deeper. Because we were wanted to apply to galaxy formation. So we wanted to see what kind of universe will come up from there. Because just by free a little bit the constraint on the fitness. That's an interesting aspect of the genetic algorithm.
That's right.
Sorry, just so you are saying that the primary driver for evolutionary biology is actually the environment? Or I'm like paraphrasing there.
Yes, the environment actually the one that posed the problem. Can you survive in this environment? And so all these species that exist today is those who can answer yes to that question. And they answer it in different ways, but they're all valid solutions. So you don't just get one. The common, really bad misconception about evolution is that sentence, survival of the fittest. That's patently wrong. It's the survival of the good enough. That's why there are many solutions. If survival of the fittest is only one, so it's actually the wrong sentence to say.
Okay, so thank you, Paulus, and thank you to all the other speakers. We will have a 5 minutes break before starting the next session with Amir. So just have a glass of water, move a little bit because it's been a long meeting, and we will be back in 5 minutes. Okay, thank you.
I'll just stay here just in case somebody asks something.
Yeah. We also will have some time at the end because we are perfectly in time. So we have time at the end for more questions and more discussion.
The next session, or the next part of the session, is about the Frontier Federated Machine Learning Capacity Building for Australia project, which it's a joint initiative between the ARDC and partner organizations, which is building national capability in federated machine learning. The project enables institutions to collaborate across sensitive data sets without sharing raw data, with a focus on real-world health applications and secure distributed analysis. So now we're going to hear from Dr. Amir Anees, who is contributing to this project. And so he is a postdoc research fellow at Southwestern Sydney Clinical Campus School of Clinical Medicine, UNSW, Australia. And he holds a PhD in computer science with a research focus on federated learning, privacy-preserving machine learning, and secure distributed AI systems. Right, Amir?
Cool. Thanks, Bright, for the lovely introduction. I'll share my screen. So I'll be presenting an overview of the ARDC Frontier project on federated machine learning capacity building for Australia, especially the outputs for work package 2. This project runs for 2 years between July 2025 and June 2027. I'll begin with a high-level overview of the project, then introduce federated learning and its types. And after that, I'll focus in more on the outputs of work package 2, which forms the core technical component of this project. So coming to the structure of this project, it is composed of 6 interconnected working packages, and each work package is undertaken by one or more institutions, including UNSW, the University of Sydney, University of Queensland, and QSIF. Work package 1 focuses on overall project coordination and building the federated learning community. Work package 2 is centered on expanding federated learning capability for machine learning models, and this is the package I will focus on today. Work package 3 addresses secure deployment across different systems. Work package 4 focuses on the virtual research environment architecture that enables researchers to assess and run federated learning workflows. Work package 5 is responsible for governance standards and policy frameworks. And finally, the last package, the work package 6, provides practical resources and support for federated learning adoption and analysis. Together, these 6 work packages cover the full technical, operational, and governance ecosystem needed to support federated learning in Australia. Now, before I dive into the work package 2, let me take a step back and walk you through the motivation behind federated learning and why it matters for our work. Now, in machine learning, the more data we have, the better machine learning models are. This figure shows that progression visually. On the left, imagine a machine learning model trained on a single clinic data. It learns, but the classification is not that clear. But as we add more clinics from district to world, the model starts to generalize better. It performs well, not just on a single group, but across different populations. So ideally, we would want to assess all of this diverse data to train our machine learning models much stronger. But in reality, and this is what we'll see next, combining or assessing all of this diverse data isn't so simple. Now, if we look at the data landscape around us, there's already a lot of information being generated every day in hospitals, research centers, and registries. However, these institutes, these centers, keeps their data within their own systems, separated by strict privacy, ethical, and technical boundaries. So while we do have a lot of valuable data, it's effectively locked away in silos. So how can we train our machine learning models when all of this valuable data can't be moved or shared? Well, that's exactly where federated learning comes in. In federated learning, instead of collecting or combining data from these distributed data sources to a centralized server, the server initiates the training by initializing a global model. And by global model, we mean the model parameters such as the weight matrices and the bias vectors in the case of a neural network, which are then transmitted to these participating clients. And upon receiving, these clients train this global model on their local data, producing local models, which are then sent back to the server, where the server simply aggregates or average these local models, producing an updated version of the global model. This completes one round of training between the server and the participating clients, and this will continue until the model is optimized or converged to a local minima. Now, the important bit in federated learning is that the local data of these participating clients never leaves their nodes, preserving their privacy, and at the same time, enabling learning from these distributed data sources collectively. Now, this setup might look ideal, but it only works well for one particular data partitioning type at a time. This is the first type, known as the horizontal data partitioning, in which the participating clients, in this case the hospitals, share the same data features such as age, diagnosis, and the output feature, but for different set of patients. And here is the second type, the vertical data partitioning, in which the participating clients, again the hospitals, share the same data samples, the same set of patients, but for different data features. For example, one hospital might have demographic and clinical information, the second hospital might have imaging data, and the third hospital might have genetic information. So these two setups, horizontal and vertical, assume a clean separation of data between the clients. However, in reality, data isn't cleanly divided as purely horizontal or purely vertical. Some clients may have overlapping patients, some may have different patients, but for the same data features. This makes much more complicated data partitioning scenario, what we call as the combined data partitioning. And that's exactly what we are dealing within our network, which is the Australian Cancer Data Network. That is, we have several hospitals such as Liverpool Hospital and Westmead Hospital, where the data is horizontally partitioned. And then we have registry data, such as from New South Wales Registry, which offers complementary or additional input features for the same patients present in those hospitals, making it a combined data partitioning. Now that we have a shared understanding of federated learning and how data partitioning works in practice, let's bring this back to work package 2 and see how we have been applying these concepts in our project. So coming to the work package 2, it has 4 main components, and we will see the details of the components assigned to our group at UNSW. These 4 components are selecting and reviewing open source federated learning tools, implementing FL models, developing frameworks to manage data imbalance, which is undertaken by the University of Sydney, and finally, assessing data reconstruction risks. The first component of work package 2 focuses on selecting open source federated learning tools suitable for Australian health research. The aim of this component is to systematically evaluate and benchmark existing open source FL frameworks against the specific requirements of Australian health data environments, considering factors such as documentation, community engagement, privacy compliance, scalability, ease of integration, and so on. This project component involves a team of 15 members from 6 research groups across Australia and internationally working collaboratively. The team has completed the creation of the initial assessment criteria to shortlist the tools, and then the detailed assessment criteria for evaluating the selected tools. A total of 11 tools have been shortlisted, and each tool is independently reviewed by 3 groups. The scoring or the reviews of these tools is almost completed. The next steps include aggregating or averaging these scores from those 3 assigned groups per each tool, and then drafting a paper and hopefully submitting it for the possible publication. The second component of Work Package 2 focuses on implementing federated learning for various data partitioning scenarios for different machine learning models on locally, on Nectar Cloud, and for real-time training as well. What has been done is the development and implementation of horizontal, vertical, and combined FL frameworks in a local simulation environment for 3 machine learning models: neural networks, logistic regression, and decision trees using the Flower framework. For this component, we have so far published works on vertical and combined data partitioning scenarios, considering neural networks as a base machine learning model. The next step for this component, the second component of Work Package 2, is to make sure that the implementations are feasible on the Nectar Cloud as well. The underlying algorithmic implementation remains the same as compared to the simulations on the local machine. However, deploying on Nectar introduces real-world communication challenges that don't arise in a single machine simulations. Since the clients and server are physically distributed and they have to exchange large matrices in vertical and combined data partitioning scenarios during each round of federated learning, it can cause significant communication bottlenecks. So to address this, we are exploring several strategies, including quantization, compression, and matrix partitioning to reduce the volume of data exchange between nodes without compromising much on model integrity and performance in terms of accuracy. Finally, we plan to demonstrate these FL implementations using radiotherapy health data on Australian federated learning network, such as hospitals and registries through the Australian Cancer Data Network. For this, we have whitelisted the Nectar server for our partner hospitals, ensuring that each hospital's network acting as a client can securely connect to the server. A big thanks to our team member, Fahim Alam, who has been actively engaging with the hospital IT teams to make this whitelisting happen. The last component of Work Package 2 aims to develop a framework for assessing and mitigating federated learning data reconstruction risks. Although, as we have seen earlier, federated learning have this ability to preserve the privacy of local data by only sharing model parameters and not the data itself. But the server could still reconstruct the local data of a client from its shared model parameters. This is formally known as the gradient inversion attack, and there have been a lot of advancement in this space, assuming much softer assumptions. So to mitigate these attacks, there are several strategies which could be used. It could be differential privacy, in which a small amount of random noise is added to the model parameters before they are transmitted to the server. So the server would have the noisy model parameters, and it would be very difficult, if not impossible, to reconstruct the local data from the noisy model parameters. The drawback or the downside of using differential privacy is that it impacts the accuracy of the global machine learning model. Another technique could be homomorphic encryption, in which the model parameters are encrypted before transmitting to the server. The beauty of homomorphic encryption is that the server don't have to decrypt those encrypted model parameters for aggregating or for adding those model parameters. The result of the addition applied on the encrypted model parameters would be exactly same as applied on the non-encrypted model parameters. So there is no loss of accuracy in homomorphic encryption. The downside of using homomorphic encryption is that the computational cost is very high and may not be feasible for some of the FL applications. Another technique could be masking, where masks are generated and added to the model parameters, which is quite similar to differential privacy. However, the masks are generated in such a way that their effect will be nullified when added together. So again, there is no loss of accuracy in masking as contrast to the differential privacy. However, the downside is that we need another third party beside the server so that it can generate and distribute those masks to the participating clients. Now, considering these approaches and their drawbacks, we have developed FL algorithms that could resist this gradient inversion attacks by incorporating encryption and masking. In our proposed algorithms, the masks are generated by one of the participating clients, so there is no need for a third party. And also, the underlying mathematical model of the proposed combined FL is exactly the same as model trained in a centralized way. So there is no loss of accuracy as well. So I'm going to illustrate the working of our developed combined FL framework, which incorporates masking and encryption. I won't go over the much technical details here, but if anyone is interested in learning more, I'd be happy to chat after the presentation. So in the proposed combined FL algorithm, we have a bunch of hospitals labeled as hospital 1 to hospital N, where the data is horizontally partitioned. That is, each hospital have the same data features labeled as X1 and X2, but for different set of patients. Beside these hospitals, we have registry data, which has additional input features labeled as X3 and X4, along with the output feature labeled as Y, but for the same patients present in those hospitals. So now if we consider these hospitals as one group and the registry as another, then the data is both horizontally and vertically partitioned between these two groups. So overall, the data is both horizontally and vertically partitioned between these different clients. Beside these clients, we have a server who's responsible for coordinating the learning process between these clients. Before the training begins, the registry establishes secure communication channels with the clients via the server, which includes sending of encryption keys, digital certificates, and encrypted masks to the clients. Further, the underlying machine learning model considered here is the neural networks, but it could be extended or applied to other machine learning models as well. To begin the training, each hospital will compute the linear part of the first layer of the neural network, that is the Z matrix, which is essentially the product of the data input features and the weight matrix, followed by the addition of masks received from the registry. The registry in the same time will do the same calculation, that is the computation of the linear part of the first layer followed by the addition of the masks. These masked Z matrix will be transmitted to the server, where the server will aggregate these Z matrices and then applies a nonlinear activation function, which could be a ReLU or sigmoid activation function, and then will send the results of these nonlinear activations back to the registry. Upon receiving, the registry will continue the computation for the rest of the layers, that is the forward propagation, the computation of the loss, and the backward propagation. Finally, the registry will send the DZ matrix, which is the partial derivative of the loss with respect to the Z matrix, to the participating hospitals, so that they can update their model parameters as well. This completes one round of training between the hospitals and the registry, and again it will continue until the model is converged to a local minima. Again, the important bit in this whole scenario is that the local data never leaves these clients. Only the intermediate results in terms of the Z matrices or the nonlinear activation function will be shared among the participating clients. There are three major things to take away from this combined FL algorithm. The first one is, as I mentioned earlier, the underlying mathematical model of the proposed FL algorithm is exactly the same as achieved in a centralized machine learning, where the data is at one place. So there is no loss of accuracy compared to the centralized machine learning. Second, it preserves the privacy thanks to the masking and the encryption techniques that we have used. We are preserving the privacy and resisting the gradient and inversion attacks as well. And finally, this proposed combined FL algorithm is extendable to the other data partitioning scenarios as well. For example, if there's another registry which has more additional input features, the proposed algorithm could incorporate that with minor adjustments. Also, if the output feature is with the hospitals and not with the registry, the proposed algorithm could still work with minor adjustments. So to summarize, let me bring together the three key outputs we have delivered so far under Work Package 2. First, a systematic review of open source federated learning tools, evaluating their suitability for Australian health research contexts, which is now in its final stages. Second, a working implementation of the combined FL frameworks currently validated locally with deployment on Nectar Cloud and integration with real hospital networks actively underway. And third, we have developed an initial mechanism to resist the gradient inversion attacks, strengthening the privacy guarantees of our framework with further privacy preserving work in the pipeline. So that's pretty much it from my side. Thank you for listening. Any questions?
I don't see any yet in the chat. I kind of have one. It's because I
Sure.
find the interesting bit that you can reverse engineer a model to figure out what you trained on it. But
Yep.
you're talking about the random noise part where you can
Yep.
insert noise to it, impacts accuracy, but
Yep.
there's not much of a cost or an overhead in that. Does it matter the type of noise? Like I guess
It
that's more or
does.
less like the type of noise. Is it some impacts accuracy less than others while still preserving the same security?
Yeah, it does. So there are different kind of random noises that we could add, and we need to carefully design the type of noise and obviously, more importantly, the amount of noise that we want to add. So if we are using Gaussian, it has a bit different effect, or if we are using Laplacian, it would have a different effect. And as I mentioned, more than the type, it's the amount of the noise that we have to carefully design. Adding more noise means that it guarantees more resisting against the gradient inversion attack, but at the same time, it will impact more on the performance of the machine learning model.
I suppose you're removing the signal
Yeah.
as far as like it's that, yeah, you're going in that way.
Yeah.
Um, so Sri has a question. It's like, do we have to retrain the entire global model when a new data set is added to the network?
Um, well, if we have trained our federated global machine learning model, let's say on 5 participating clients, and after that we have added a sixth one, we could use that trained global machine learning model as a pre-trained model that could assist in training for the sixth one. We don't have to do the whole training, incorporating all of those 5 participating clients. We could use the last one, the trained global machine learning model, which is trained on the fifth one, and incorporate the sixth one. So no, we don't have to. But obviously, it may not be mathematically same as incorporating the sixth one in the first place, but I don't suspect there would be much impact on the performance of the global machine learning model.
So Mohammed has a question.
Yep.
Can we use generative models inside the FL pipelines?
Yes, essentially every machine learning model that we could think of, as I mentioned, we have already demonstrated for 3 machine learning models: decision trees, logistic, and the neural network. For the decision trees, we are not exchanging the model parameters, but those different metrics such as Gini impurity and the number of class counts and things like that. So for the generative AI, we might not be exchanging the exact model parameters. Maybe we have to exchange some other intermediate information. But at the end, yeah, we could do FL incorporating essentially every machine learning model.
And Nana?
Yeah, I was actually picking up on that generative model thing. Whatever the information you exchange should be able to put together and add value to the whole model.
Yep.
And so as Amir pointed out, it would you can't really reconstruct the parameters of a generative AI model given the size and so on. But there may be something else. Maybe prompt might be exchanged, or some other learning could be exchanged. But it will be a different type of FL. But it is an interesting question.
Thanks, Amir. No, I think I was beyond models actually. I was also thinking in line of filling the data gaps, especially as Amir mentioned about data distributions. So Gen AI maybe potentially will be helping in that direction as well.
So you mean to say develop synthetic data on the fly?
Yeah, so synthetic data plus different forms of data distributions that we have across in hospitals. So something like that can bring a value from actually Gen AI models that they can bring in.
I mean, the synthetic data certainly has a role, but it doesn't have to be in line. Maybe you can generate ahead, but there may be a reason why you want to do it while you are uh, uh, running the model. But I think Amir and Louis are the experts here. So I think I'll defer to them.
Yeah, for the different data distributions among the participating clients, there's this one another perspective or angle in which we deal different data distributions among the participating clients, but I believe that's a different thing. Generating simulated data on the fly, I'm not sure we could do that within the FL, or we could do that in a centralized machine learning. So yeah, I'm not able to comment on that. My apologies.
Thanks, Amir. It was a great overview and presentation.
We've got one from David for you, Amir. Can you comment about the data definition and quality requirements for federated ML?
Well, it's essentially the same as we have in a centralized machine learning, but it could be possible that one of the client has more data or more balanced data as compared to the other one. So, for example, in the case of a binary classification, one hospital might have, let's say, only 100 data samples, and out of those 100 data samples, we have 95 data samples belonging to one class, and the rest of the five are belonging to the other one. So that's a problem of data imbalance between the participating clients. So there are techniques to handle these data imbalance within our federated learning framework. The third component of this work package 2 specifically handles this research problem, which is undertaken by the University of Sydney. But yeah, there are techniques available to tackle the data imbalance between the participating clients.
Right, that seems to be all the questions now, but we'll take the time now because we do have a little bit of time left before the end to open it back up for if anybody had thought of any questions for the other three speakers, or if you have another one for Amir.
I'll stop sharing then.
I think I did have something from Morgan. In the heat maps, like the activation maps that you're showing of the different variables in yours, there were some things showing sea surface temperature over mainland Australia, I think, or surface like the sea. I think from memory, it's I guess an hour and a half ago now. The It looked like some anomalies where it was bleeding over into the land from the sea, and I guess the question is how much did that impact, or if that was explored, what impact that would have on the results, given that I guess we know that the sea is not over the land.
Yeah. It seems to be because of from memory of kind of going through and exploring some of them, it seems to be that it's related to the compression that the kind of as the CNN model loses resolution through the layers, it reduces the resolution, and then the importance is assigned to or comes from that much lower resolution version of the image before it kind of feeds back through to the input layers. So it's because some of those, I think it's the sea surface temperature. If a part of the coastline is important, then some of those input pixels from over the land are also included in the pooling layers as it comes through. So there's definitely some improvements that can be made to the method to try and figure out why those particular ones are being included, and some methods for kind of cutting them back out as well. So I think some of the attention maps from kind of trying a transformer architecture instead of a CNN architecture might help improve on that as well, and can kind of look at the attention maps from different layers and look at them from the earlier layers as well. That potentially reduces that pooling problem.
So I'd like to thank all of our speakers again for presenting and coming along, and everybody for coming along and contributing and watching and all the things. I think that is it. The slides and recordings will be made available after, and I believe there will be a short questionnaire that'll be sent out to everybody, and it's be very useful information if you could do that and submit it.